Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Okay, let me give you a little background. A few doors down from where my office is located, I have a home office, but I have a building, a house converted to office space I purchased, 23 years ago to work out of. But at any rate, it's a commercial area. There's only one house left on the whole street that someone lives in. Actually, I own it and I rent it out. But neither here nor there. A few doors down from that is on the corner is a convenience store, a gas station where you can gas up, go in and purchase whatever. And it's for me, it's great. It's right there. If I don't pack a lunch or don't have a lunch meeting or something like that, I can go grab something. I can go gas up the car. The gas is generally cheap. It's a United Dairy Farmer, or UDF as it's generally known here locally, or the shorthand version of it. But it's, so I'm there. I don't want to say constantly, but I'm pretty routine. It's a great spot. It's a great place for me to go get fuel, personal fuel for the car, so on and so forth. But there was one particular morning I went there. And I don't always go inside, but that particular morning I gassed up the car. Usually Monday morning I'll gas up the car, and I'm pretty sure it was a Monday. But at any rate, it doesn't really matter. I went in, and I gassed up the car, locked the car, went inside. And I was, grabbed things I don't want to say I needed, things I wanted, right? A bag of chips, bottle of pop, a pint of ice cream for my wife. Go ahead and judge me. Don't judge my wife. But anyhow, go ahead and judge me. But so I'm standing in line at any rate. I've got, my can of pop or a bottle of pop, whatever it was, a bag of chips, neither of which I need, and a pint of ice cream for my wife. And there's a guy ahead of me, and he's checking out, and he's getting some chewing tobacco. I came to learn he was a handyman. Getting some chewing tobacco, some cigarettes, and whatever else. And then he turned around, and the woman said, "Hey, is that everything?" And he turned around, and one of his coworkers was there with a cup of coffee, and he pointed to his coworker, and he said, "I'm going to get his coffee too." And then he pointed at me and said, "You know what? I'm feeling good. I'm going to buy that guy's stuff." And he pointed at me, and he paid for my bottle of pop, my bag of chips, and my pint of ice cream. $7. I don't know. I guess I could figure it out. It doesn't really matter. But he paid for my stuff, and he looked at me, and he smiled, and he said, just pay it forward. Don't worry about paying it back. Just pay it forward. Do it for somebody else. And I'm like, okay, yeah, definitely will. I mean, it's, for people who know me, my MO is always trying to find ways to help people. In all honesty, I haven't gone to UDF and paid for the stuff of the person behind me yet. Again, I'm not in there all the time, and there's not always lots of people in there when I'm in there. But ultimately, I will do it. But I certainly have made a point of trying to do things for other people, thinking about that particular moment. In fact, I grabbed his business card and I said, "Listen, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to, not in a bad way, but I'm going to thank you. I'm going to do you a favor as well." And being a handyman, I went on Facebook and I shared his story and I shared his card out, and I have his card, and I'm going to refer him on. People need handymen from time to time, and it's good to have a handyman's card. I'll just shout it out right now. His name is Aaron Jordan, and Aaron's number is 614-680-3587. When I talked to him, he said he had plenty of business, and he might have plenty of business, but we could always use more business. So if you need a handyman, Aaron Jordan he's a generous person. Anyhow, what I'm getting at is the whole notion of random acts of kindness, and why don't we do more random acts of kindness? I mean, Aaron is literally out $7. Hopefully there's a net gain. People, I've given his name out, I've given his card out. I will continue to do that. I certainly know other handymen, different parts of town. It's hard to find a good handyman. And so I think his net gain from that, because I certainly wouldn't have gotten his card if he hadn't done that. Not that it's any sort of quid pro quo, but I stand in line. I'm just minding my own business, trying to think about what I'm doing, and I'm not worried about. Uh, um, I'm not judging anybody else. I don't want people to judge me. So just waiting for my turn. And but he kind of initiated contact, and from that, I got his card, and hopefully things come from him. Um, but why do these things not happen more often? And I stumbled across a couple articles, a couple studies that were actually forwarded on to me from my Cyblog subscription, and it was just kind of interesting as to why we do the things we do or don't do the things we do. Why don't these random acts of kindness happen more often? And what what they talk about, the author of it is a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Dean. He's a psychologist and he's the founder of Cyblog. And for those who have not tuned in, from time to time I will share things I find in there. Sometimes I'm embarrassed because I share more often than I think's right. Look into it. It's a paid subscription for much of the content, but there's a lot of content that's free. So just do a search for Psyblog, Psyblog. But he had a particular post for members only called "Small Gifts Give Much More Pleasure Than We Predict." And what it goes on to talk about, what Jeremy talks about, is these studies, and what they find is that people routinely underestimate how good random acts of kindness make other people feel. In other words, we do these things and it's like ho hum. And you know what? I haven't had a chance to talk to Aaron about the situation. I wonder what he thought, right? He probably figured, no big deal. Paid for this guy's thing. It's kind of funny in the moment that he did it, and he probably didn't really give it too much thought. Um, but I can tell you from my end, it's not that I didn't have $7 on me, but it's just, it was pennies from heaven. It was like finding a $10 bill on the sidewalk. It made me feel good that somebody acknowledged me, and I don't, good enough that when I came back to the office, I made a point of earmarking probably 30 minutes of my time to help him out. He doesn't realize, how that helped me. And and that's probably true of everybody. In fact, this is what the study says, is that they're concluding that people don't realize that when they when they do something, these modest little gifts, these random acts of kindness, just the value that they create. And so the conclusions come from a study in which they had 84 people who were walking in a park, and I'm not exactly sure how they constructed this study. It's neither here nor there to a certain extent. I would imagine anything that's reported in Cyblog is something that's been in a journal, and if it's been in a journal, it's probably been peer reviewed, meaning other psychologists, other researchers have looked at it and said, yes, those findings are valid. So I'm going to give it all the benefit of the doubt. But what they did was they had 84 people in the park, probably weren't there all at the same time. But these participants were either asked to keep or give away a cup of hot chocolate. And most of the people chose to give it away. And then both the giver and the receiver rated their experience, the expectation of the giver was asked, what do you think, scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 5, whatever. What do you think the recipient felt? And then the recipient was similarly asked the same question. I'm having trouble here this morning. How they felt getting the cup of hot chocolate. And it, time and again, the givers underestimate underestimated just how much pleasure the receivers felt from getting that cup of hot chocolate. And it doesn't, in the side blog portion of it, doesn't talk about the weather. Obviously, it's, somebody gives me a cup of hot chocolate on a humid day, I'm not going to be feeling the same as if it's, kind of a damp, cold, windy, blustery, through your clothes, chilled to the bone sort of a day. But it's, essentially the givers totally underestimated how good they made people feel with respect to those efforts. And they repeated the experience with cupcakes as well. And what they found is that that what it was, hot chocolate or cupcake, really didn't matter. It's just that people were just touched that people, went out of their way to do something for somebody. But the other thing that they found, which I thought was really interesting, is that they did these experiments in a lab as well. And what they found is that the people who received gifts were more likely to pay it forward. In other words, the notion of being generous was actually contagious. That act of kindness was contagious, and the people who received something were more likely to give something in the future. So the point of this short little episode is not that, hey, I scored a bag of chips and a bottle of pop and a pint of ice cream, although that is a wonderful byproduct of it. But the point is that when we do things, random acts of kindness, and it could be to total strangers, it could be to people that we know, that the benefit that the person receives is far greater. It's far greater than we anticipate. And we ought to take more time to reach out and do things for people, small things that don't really cost us a whole lot. Introductions that come out of the blue, recommendations out of the blue, things like that, because those little things really have a lasting value, one, and those little things sort of inspire other people to do little things, and that just kind of cascades forward. So just a little something to keep in mind as you work through the days and interact with people in your network.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.